It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, I must say right off the bat, first and foremost, this hat not indicative of how I'm feeling on this misery Monday.
You gotta get a different hat. You know, see.
Yeah, I've looked at the same place that I had this one at. They do not have just like the opposite of this, like a frowny face. I know that those exist. I'm gonna have to look elsewhere. I was hoping to get the exact same thing, just a frowny face, but fly. Alan, how was the trip to Cleveland?
It was okay. I didn't have a great weekend either. I'll be honest. Like, I had computer problems. But whatever. Get through it. Steelers.
You were in the AFC North trenches as well.
I was playing some 500 ball this weekend. Like, it is what it is. Steelers not looking great. Not helping matters, certainly. Boy, was that game it was a chore to cover. Like there was not a lot going on there. Like does not make I don't need them to win. I don't really care, but like it does not make the job easy when like basically nothing happened for like 3/4 of that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you are a impartial fan, what reason did you have for that to be the game that you were tuning into?
Even if you're a partial fan, like give them something to care about. I don't know, man. It was bad. There was not much happening. And I feel like at the end of the day, we're back to where we've been like 100 times over again, where like everybody's mad and everything's awful. And like, man, I don't know. Like on one hand, like that was a bad game, but like it's a game. It's like if your feelings about this team are changing dramatically based on the events of the last 24 hours, you're probably doing it wrong. Like, it just is what it is. Like they it's a really, they're probably a pretty good team. Like they are. Like they're not like this is not the place where we need like, oh my God, fire everybody. Like drastic changes. They're 6-4, very comfortably in playoff position. They're probably going to be the team we thought they were. I don't know. I'm not sure I understand the hysterics I've seen from the fan base today.
I think it all goes back to one thing. I think a lot of it is one person. I think it's what they're seeing from the quarterback, Kenny Pickett, week in, week out. Now seeing him go head-to-head in this game, think a lot of people considering this just like an easy win, 5th-round rookie DTR on the other side, thinking that there's no way the Steelers are going to lose this football game, even with the injuries that the Steelers had on their defense going against that offense. And to see the way Kenny Pickett played, the way that they ran the ball, but he wasn't able to support them in any way with the passing game, I think that is probably why week in and week out, like the result, obviously he's going to play a lot into it, but especially when they lose, it's even going to be more magnified. And I think that's the reason that the conversation is what it is today, Alan, is because of the way that the quarterback looked once again.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't very good. I'm not sure he was like any. It was you have to like it. What was the final? What was the final line for Pickett there? I mean, and then compare it to the final line for Green Bay. And like now compare the difference in quality of the defenses. I mean, I think that's where Mike Tomlin's post-game press conferences hit the mark.
He was 15 of 28 for 106 yards, 3 sacks taken, added 4 carries for 9 yards.
Okay. And then, so he has 106 yards passing, 62 passer rating. The week before against Green Bay, he had 126 yards passing and a 75 passer rating. I mean, comparing the difference between Green Bay's defense and Cleveland's defense, that's basically the same performance. Like it's the same game. Like it's not like I did not think that he was some new kind of awful in this game. I just think he's been the guy that he's been. Now, obviously, you hope that he can improve and get better, and not seeing that is frustrating. But man, like I don't know, I didn't think it was It's the same stuff. It's the same. It's funny because it's the same stuff I've been seeing from Kenny for 2 years. That like before he used to get Matt Canada yelled at and got chance for Matt Canada to be fired, and now we want to bench the quarterback. It's all the same stuff. Like I don't know. Like I honestly thought that was probably Canada's worst game of the year in terms of play calling. It was really one of the very few times where I thought that they were obviously doing the wrong thing a lot of the time. Like, it was pretty clear early on they were running the ball okay, and they didn't do it enough. They didn't get Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren's first touch came in the second quarter. Like, I don't know. Like, that can't happen. I'm not saying that he needs to dominate the carries, but he's got to be involved in the game plan earlier. And then when it was pretty clear that he had a thing going, I thought they didn't do enough of it. I'm all like, I don't think that like Najee Harris needs to never play and that Jaylen Warren needs to play every snap. But within the context of a certain game, if it's very clear that like one of them is going a lot better than the other one, I think the Steelers need to be a little bit more aggressive in just turning to the obvious hot hand when that happens. Like Jaylen Warren had 14 yards of carry and Najee Harris had 2, and Najee Harris was still on the field losing 5 yards, by the way, like in the fourth quarter, on the next to last offensive drive where they had a really good chance to score. Like, why? It was clear that Warren was a better back yesterday. That's not going to be the case every game. Sometimes they're going to need both of them. Like, I'm fine with, but they got to be a little bit more flexible to be able to get the guy that is doing well into a bigger part of the game plan, especially when Najee's just not doing that well. And so I thought really Canada really held them back in this game more than he has in most. And the things with Pickett were, again, like there was a little bit of inaccuracy, but it was a lot of not being on the same page with his receivers, like a lot, especially Diontae Johnson. But like, okay, by the end of the game, it was pretty clear that Kenny and Diontae just didn't have it. Like that day, like they were not feeling each other. They were not making the same reads. It was not comfortable. It was not in sync. The last drive of the game, it's 3 more passes to Diontae Johnson. Like if you get me to that point in the game, Jaylen Warren is cooking, killing. Nothing to Diontae Johnson is working at all. Why are those the throws? Like, get the ball to George, get the ball to Warren. Those are the guys making play. Like, I don't know. I really felt like the play calling let the Steelers down in a pretty significant way. That it has that. I'll say that's the difference. Is that Kenny has really struggled all year. The play calling was much better the last 2 games, and I felt like this game represented a regression in a lot of ways. In terms of they gave back some of that progress they had made.
Right. We're talking about Kenny and like whether this is, obviously you don't want this to be the solution for a guy that you took in the first round and you hope is the guy, but he didn't even have to be a part of this yesterday. Like, we didn't have to be having this conversation because they could have won this game despite his performance, just putting the ball in Jaylen Warren's hands more.
If this game, like why did he throw the ball 30 times? Like 40, what do they have? 32, 30, 34 dropbacks? Why?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. That part of it was baffling to me. You knew it wasn't going well. You knew the offense, and look, there's lots of the offensive line stunk. They may have had their worst game in a while. Certainly their worst game with Broderick Jones in the lineup since they went to these 5. They couldn't protect Kenny from the first snap all throughout the game. But again, like, if you know you're going to struggle to block Myles Garrett, you see what the Cleveland Browns did, right? With Dorian Thompson-Robinson, they knew they couldn't block TJ and Alex Highsmith. The ball was out fast. Everything was short. They ran the ball a ton. They even ran on 3rd and long. They didn't even put him in any position for negativity. Like, they had the game plan for what the Steelers should have been doing. Like, Canada was so thoroughly out-coached in this game by the guy on the other side, dealing with the same and even a worse problem, really. I mean, like, no one out there in the NFL right now, if you'd be like, you could acquire Dorian Thompson-Robinson or Kenny Pickett for the same 5th round draft pick right now. We're going to make a trade. Like 0 of 31 opposite GMs are picking DTR over Pickett. Like none. Like the guy has talent. Like, but the Steelers aren't getting it to work, and the Browns figured it out. Like that part was really frustrating to watch. Like I just think that was the bigger, maybe not the bigger problem, because I think Kenny's lack of development is a huge big picture problem, but it's why they lost that game when they've won the last couple.
Right. And that's a good point, is so game plan wise, didn't seem like they had the right thing in place offensively, but even within the ebbs and flows of the game, when you see what's working and what's not, to kind of go away from it. 9 carries for Jaylen Warren, who led the lead in rushing, by the way, this week, despite only having 9 carries and 12 total touches,
now
5 of which.
And now is first in the league in yards per carry.
Yeah. I mean, unbelievable, unfathomable to me to look back on this game and look back at what he was able to do in this game and say that they got away from that. You mentioned that last drive, 0 for 3 to Diontae Johnson. It's hard to say for sure, but I just feel like if he gets 2 touches there, you're getting into Boswell range just based off what he was able to do in this game.
Yeah. And even if they're like, just give me a check, like that's the one place,
right?
Like, that's the thing that they're good at. That's the one place where it's perfect. You have the time, spread everybody out, run some guys deep, run some guys to the flats. If you don't have a sure thing, like that's exactly where you only needed. They were at you only need 35 yards. Like, go get 10 at a time. Like that, they had the time. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't think a lot of that made none of it made sense. The game plan coming in didn't make sense. And then there was a poor adjustment to the facts on the ground of the game. And I think the game plans have been better the last couple weeks, but not adjusting to the way the game goes has been, I think, a Canada thing for a while. Like I think we've seen that over and over again, where this is not the first time that this has happened in a game like this. And so I think a lot of the reasonable frustration to me is that the Steelers are in a position where a lot of things are bad and there are no obvious or easy solutions. Diontae Johnson said it today. He was like, it's not like there's no magic bullet. Like there's nothing to do. There's no switch to throw to fix the problems with the Steelers offense. It doesn't matter. Like all that they can do is go back to practice and try to chip away at it. There's nothing to do. There's no way to fix it. No magical way anyway. It's just hard work and trying to get better.
Well, and we talked about the communication thing, and obviously you don't have the answer for this. No one necessarily does, because if we did, we wouldn't be having this conversation. They would just be able to fix that. But it just surprises to me that they seem this far apart in terms of the page that they're on. Like, because to me, coming out of college, like the intangible stuff that Kenny Pickett brought to the table, like the accuracy, his pocket presence, his ability to go through progressions, his ability to make things happen outside of the structure of plays, and just like be that guy in the locker room. Like to me, that's why it's so odd that he isn't on the same page, especially with Diontae Johnson, seemingly more than the other pass catchers. I said that you don't have the answer to this, but how is it that we have the quarterback and your number one pass catcher this far apart?
I don't know. And it's not like it's so much of it is just like feel. Like it's not like, I mean, there were a couple times where like Diontae ran one route and Pickett threw the other. Like that can't happen. That's kind of inexcusable. But what's very excusable is like, okay, if you look at the first down play on the last drive of the game, okay, they have twin outs to the right side. Like Diontae's running like a 5-yard route and George is running like a 10-yard route, and they're both kind of over there, right? And you see like Diontae goes up and he just makes like a little bit too much contact with his receiver. It kind of looks to me like Diontae is thinking that the ball is going to George, where he's just sucking up that defender and making sure that he doesn't go up into the second level. And then he turns a little bit later than Kenny's expecting. The ball comes to him. It's incomplete. I don't know. Like it's such a small thing. Like it just didn't seem like Diontae was ready for the ball. I don't know if like that's a progression thing where he thought he should be lower. I don't think Kenny sees the field very well. I don't think he has at any point in his career. I don't think that that's controversial at this point. Like if you go back and look at this tape, there's open guys all over that were not being found and not being hit. And then sometimes there were, other issues too. Like I talked about the protection, but it just seems like there's a lack of like confidence, and not like, oh, I can't do it confidence. It's like, oh, he's going to be there confidence. Like, where is, he's coming out of his, like, it just seems like every throw made with anticipation is wrong. And every throw made without anticipation takes too long to develop and he gets sacked. Like that seems like what happened all the time. Like when he tried to be decisive and put his foot down and make a throw and say, okay, here's the read, this is where the guy's going to be, the guy wasn't there. And when he waited and tried to get a guy to show him his hands and be open, he got sacked or he got chased from the pocket. And so I think that was like, that's sort of an underrated part of like, okay, here's what the Browns did. Why didn't the Steelers do what the Browns did? Well, they kind of tried to. They just threw like 100 incompletions on those plays that should be pretty easy. And I don't really understand how you get to this point in the year and that's happening. It doesn't really make sense. Diontae Johnson did miss a bunch of time. And Kenny and him have not been on the same page most of the year, really. I mean, you remember the pass in the end zone against Jacksonville, right? Kenny wanted him to stop. He kept going through behind him. Last week against Green Bay, there's the one where he breaks off the route and throws his arm up and Kenny doesn't see it. Like, this has been a thing that's been happening over and over again where it just doesn't feel like Diontae and Kenny are on the same page. And the weird thing is that I don't see it happening in practice. Like I see the connection in practice and then it doesn't translate to the field. I'm not sure why that's going wrong. You can't, I mean, the way Kenny's struggling, like he can't have that. Like he can't have, and the other part of it is like, I don't know, Diontae is flipping out on the sideline, like that's not helping anything. He's a pro. I understand he's frustrated, but that's not going to make it better. I don't know how they can fix that, but they've got to find a way to be better at it than what they were in this game.
That's the thing, is like a lot of it is just so confusing to me, both within like, obviously their connection, but just like some things that have just been so much lower from Kenny's perspective than we both agreed on in the past that we just didn't think we would see with him, like the floor being so much lower, which I want to get your take on this because I put a post on X. Don't get me wrong. This is just my opinion. I don't claim to be, have the most ballage of the people out there. But I said, the thing with Canada to me is is the ceiling of the offense is going to be capped. But I feel like they're not even able to play at what the floor should or could be because of the quarterback play that they're getting right now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's 100% correct. I think that if you had like, okay, Patrick Mahomes is ridiculous. Like, let's just pick like an above average, like solid professional quarterback. If you had Kirk Cousins,
yeah.
Right? If you had Kirk Cousins in this offense, is it going to be a top 10 offense? Like, probably not. Like, it's going to be like average or slightly above average, right? Like that's, and that's because the concepts they're calling are not good enough. The plays are not good enough. The play calling is not consistent enough. Like those hold back the ceiling of the offense. But why isn't this offense 15th instead of, what are they, like 28th? It's mostly the play of the players on the field, and recently it's mostly been the quarterback. Like the running game has been going okay the last few weeks. So yeah, I mean, I think that's really what it comes down to. Now, like, do you bench him? I don't know. Like, I don't think that solves anything. Like, I don't believe that is a better option really for anyone. We've seen what Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph have to bring to the table. I don't think anyone thinks it's a long-term solution. What is this team playing for if not a long-term solution? Like, it's not like this is a team that's like Kirk Cousins away from winning the Super Bowl. Like, I don't know, like where I just don't like, what's the thought process that makes playing a backup quarterback a better option? I don't know. I don't like, even if I don't really think that they would, but even if you could look into the future right now and say, like, if the Steelers play backup quarterback the rest of the year, they'll win one more game than if they play Kenny Pickett the rest of the year. Like, would that even make sense to do, even if it won you one more game?
Well, I get it. Would it keep them in or out? Is it the difference between making the playoffs?
I think they're in the playoffs almost no matter what. Like, they'd have to.
I agree, but I'm just
they'd have to
saying, like,
really
in that
screw it
case,
up
that one
to get
game.
there.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I don't know. Like, what? Let's say no. Let's say yeah. Like, let's say yeah. Let's say that's the difference between 9-8 and 10-7. Between, like, definitely in the playoffs and, like, kind of a coin flip. I still don't really know if it's really, like, is that worth it compared to another half a season of potential development from your first round pick, to go into the offseason that much more sure of what you have in Kenny Pickett? Like, I just don't. When you draft a quarterback with your first round pick, I think you, as a franchise, you kind of, like, you basically have tied your fate to his for a few years. Like, what's best for Kenny is what's best for the Steelers. And I just don't see how it's not what's best for Kenny to keep playing. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that is an interesting question.
Here's what I will say. I think that Mike Tomlin should consider something of a quicker hook than he's had. Where if in a game, things are just not going well, okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, maybe, like, hey, we're losing by 10, halftime. Let's see what Mitch has today. Like, it's just not but the one thing I will say is that Kenny hasn't turned the ball over, which would be the one way that, like, that would happen, right? Is if he turned the ball over. So I don't know. But I think maybe that would be something to consider. But I still think, even if, Mitch came in and was okay, unless he just. But look, we know what Mitch is going to do. Like, it's not like we're just waiting for the next Mitch performance to, like, come break out. Like, he is who he is. He's what, 27 years old. Like, we know what kind of quarterback he's going to be. It might win you a game, but it's not like it's going to change the fortune of your season. Like, it's going to be what it is. So why just waste the rest of the year with that? When you could be, like, it's not like there's anything physical about this job that Kenny Pickett can't do. It's all about his ability to read defenses and gain confidence and comfortability with his wide receivers to be able to make the kind of throws you have to make to be an NFL quarterback. He's got to go, like, win or lose, he's got to go do it. Like, I just don't see how benching him fits anything. I'd love to hear your perspective on that, though.
I'm so back. I can agree in game about for sure about having a quicker hook and making a change, but I agree, like, this is the biggest question that they need an answer to long term is Kenny Pickett. So I just don't see a world, especially when, again, it's not like you have, like, a mid-round pick that you haven't seen play in a game yet sitting behind him that you would like to get a look at. You've gotten enough looks, in my opinion, at Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph to know the answer to those questions. I would rather figure out the Kenny Pickett question than play either of those two.
Yeah, I think so too. I think even if the answer is negative, even if you just get through the year and you're like, man, he's just not it.
Yeah.
I said this earlier today on a radio hit, was like, the Steelers have an algebra problem, and what they have right now is A plus B equals a negative number. And when you have that, well, sometimes one of those is negative and the other one's positive, and sometimes one of them's positive and the other one's negative. Sometimes they're both negative. Like, the Steelers could end up with this season thinking, like, hey, man, Canada's not the guy and Kenny's not the guy. But that information is useful in its own way. Like, I would rather go into the offseason saying, like, man, we tried everything we could think of and we are just sure that Kenny Pickett is not the guy, than to play Mitch Trubisky to win one more game, maybe not even, and then have no idea what you're doing next offseason. Like, I don't think that's better.
Right. And it's not like, some of these other teams around the league where they've poured a ton of assets into him being the franchise guy. Like if it doesn't work out, okay, you spent the 20th overall pick on a quarterback, and obviously Canada's contract is up as well at the end of the season. So I don't necessarily see them going that route, at least quarterback wise. But I wanted to ask you, because this has been a hot topic and you actually got involved in the conversation on X today, in terms of them making changes, not necessarily just the quarterback, just them being willing to make changes and maybe admit mistakes that they've made in making those changes, because some people think that they are, not only risk adverse on the field, but also in their personnel decisions, and aren't willing to do so to admit their faults.
Yeah, I don't really understand this. Like, I think there's this idea that the Steelers are this like that they like refuse to make changes, and I'm not really sure why that
We've
is.
seen quite a few this season alone.
Right? Like, I mean, I just don't. I'm not quite sure I understand that. Here's what I'll say about this: is that the Steelers got to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. And who the Pittsburgh Steelers are is one of the premier franchises in not just football, but all of professional sports. They got to be the Pittsburgh Steelers when they stopped managing their franchise by the seat of their pants and acquired a level of stoicism that they did not have before that. If you know anything about the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers, you know that they fired 100 coaches in 30 years, and traded all their draft picks perpetually, and they never got any better. And then Dan Rooney and Chuck Noll found a better way. They wanted to build through the draft. They wanted to have their own players. They wanted to be patient. They wanted to understand the value of stability, and they learned that lesson, and they learned it pretty well, and they've applied it pretty spectacularly. If you're my age, you remember a time when people wanted to run Bill Cowher out of town, and then he won a Super Bowl after that, right? There is a value to the way the Steelers think long term that I think runs generally pretty contrary to the instinct of fans. I think fans are it's short for fanatic. They're reactionary. They want the backup quarterback every time there's an incompletion. They want people fired every week. Literally saw a poll today that like 53% of people want Mason Rudolph to start against the Bengals. And I'm just like, what? Why?
That's hilarious to show that we've gotten to that point. You want to talk about people running people out of town.
If I'd have given a poll, like there's been like maybe 30 times over the last 10 years that I've given a poll where like 50% of people like, should Mason Rudolph be allowed to exist as a human being? 50% of Steelers fans would have voted no. Like, right. Y'all want to kill it. If this was Survivor, you'd have voted him off the island half a decade ago, but now you want him to be the starting quarterback. Like,
full circle moment.
The Steelers fans love to poke fun at the Washington Redskins and the Cleveland Browns and all these other organizations that are not stable and that don't understand this, and the success that it has caused the Steelers and the failure that they can all watch it happen to those teams right up until the Steelers fail to live up their expectations, and then they're like, "Damn it, fire everyone!" Like then they're like that. That's it all goes out the window. You all understand why Jimmy Haslam and Daniel Snyder and all those people that have failed at owners because they think just like you. That's why. That's why they're not any good at it, because they are reactionary people. And that, like, look at the Cleveland Browns right now. Like, look at this is how you get to be the Cleveland Browns. Is like the Deshaun Watson trade is not, you're just not satisfied with the way things have been. You got to shake it up, right? You got to make big changes. Like, all right, well, let's throw $160 million at a guy and 3 first-round picks. And yeah, man, big changes are not the way that successful organizations are run. Like, that's not how it works. And I think the Steelers understand that. I understand, but that doesn't mean they're afraid to make changes. Like, they make plenty of changes. I just think there's this, like, they're not going to make a change prematurely. and look, they get things wrong. I'm not saying they're infallible. I just think the idea that the Steelers are like not going to do something because they're afraid to do something is kind of crazy. I think mostly the Steelers think they know more than you about the thing that you think that they are afraid to change.
Yeah, that's it. They've made plenty of changes this year in terms of
if you're
Broderick.
thinking the Steelers won't do this because they're afraid to do this. What the reality is the Steelers think that you're wrong and that they should not do that right now. Now, that doesn't mean that they're right. Like, they're wrong all the time. Everyone in sports or pretty much every business is wrong all the time. But it's not for fear of change. I do think they have an organizational lens that skews towards stoicism. But I don't think that matters in, like, micro decisions like, how many carries should Jaylen Warren? Like, they're not giving carries to Jaylen Warren because Bill Austin traded too many first-round draft picks in the 1950s. Those two things aren't related. Like,
yeah. Anytime that people are talking about the changes that the Steelers don't make or that they think that they are afraid to make, they're talking about the offensive coordinator. Now they're talking about the quarterback and Jaylen Warren getting more touches than Najee Harris. I would say those are the three.
Yeah, I mean, they're not like I really don't think they're going to bench Kenny Pickett. I'm pretty sure they're not going to fire Matt Canada. I think they probably should find a way, as we have discussed on this show many times, to stop taking Jaylen Warren off the field for a wide receiver or an extra tight end and play both running backs at the same time, because Jaylen Warren is one of your 5 best eligible players. Najee Harris probably is too.
Yeah.
Like those are 2 of the 5. They need more of them on the field together. It will solve most of this problem, I think. And that is not anyone afraid to change. That is a lack of ability, but it is not these ideas don't. And I guarantee you that here's not what happened. Somebody in the Pittsburgh Steelers was like, hey, I have this great idea that fixes all our offensive problems, and somebody else went, nah. What happened is the lack of the first thing, right? That's where we are right now.
Yeah. Alan, I have a surprise for you before we get out of here. We just got this sent to us a little bit before we started recording here from our boy Tyler Hurnley.
I've not seen this, so I have no idea what I'm getting into. Oh my word. We're recording this late, and I apologize. I had some technical difficulties. And now I'm very glad that I did, because we would not have had this beauty.
Winchester, Virginia. So shout out to
literally
Winchester.
Can we get a side-by-side of that and the logo? Because I feel like we may have inadvertently actually ripped this person's van off. Like, that is pretty much exactly what we're going.
Yeah, imagine if they had Steelers written on the yellow there, or the gold there in the middle.
Right? That's impressive. That's exactly what we're all about here. That's a Steelers afternoon ride.
Yeah.
I also love that it is. I also love that it is spotted at the gas station, because as someone that has owned one of those vans, I can tell you they only go about 50 feet between fill-ups. So most of the time you see this van, it will be at the gas station. I believe that we need to rate this.
Yeah.
On our scale of 0 to 6 Lombardi trophies. Man, do I love this. It's not, there's no flash, there's no pizzazz.
Right, but this is, you said, it's what we're looking for. It's basically the logo. Man.
It's pretty.
I think I'm going to go 5.8 for Lambert here on this.
5.8 for Lambert. 5.8. That's a high score. That was the second highest score we've given. So we had 6 Lombardis for our Steelers Hummer with the autographs and pictures and everything else on it. That woman was also from Virginia. Now, what is it with Virginia? Virginia is apparently the second home of Steelers.
The hotbed.
Yeah. And also, wasn't the truck from the Terry Bradshaw?
Yeah, that's where Tyler.
That was in Virginia too.
It was. Yeah,
Apparently,
it
if
was.
you just want your insane Steelers vehicles, or maybe like they just love us in Virginia, and that's why we keep getting content there. I saw one. I was on my way home on Wednesday night, like late, and I was driving on the Parkway, and I passed one, but I could not I was like,
Yeah.
well, I was like, I can't like hold my phone out the window and I need like a way to, if it was in traffic or something, I could have done it, but it was evening and it was dark out and I just couldn't get a good view of it. But
Right.
man, that's quite nice. I'm gonna go with the double nickel, little peasy 5.5. And that big boot might be how you got to get that thing down the road. If every once in a while you might have to kickstart it. That's all I'm saying. We'll give a little peasy for that. That is like exactly what I had in my mind when I was describing to Dylan Winters designed our logo. Shout out to Dylan Winters Design Company if you want something as cool as our logo. But man, that is pretty much the exact vehicle I had in my head when I told him what I was thinking about.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So shout out to Tyler. Keep those vehicles coming. I mean, if you're in Virginia, you probably drive one of these things, it looks like. So
it looks like just the entire state of Virginia drives Steelers afternoon drive rides. So yeah.
And Tyler's done a great job of getting them to us. So shout out to Tyler. Alan, Tyler knows where to find you, obviously. Tell the rest of the people where they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH on X, at PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. Subscribe to Steelers Now Plus. Use the promo code Allen10, get 10% off, thereabouts. And all the best stuff for myself, Derek Bell, Nick Faribaugh, and the rest of the Steelers Now team. And like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Got all kinds of stuff. We got a whole bunch of new peeps on the YouTube channel after our post-game content because people were angry. And Najee was saying some stuff.
Yeah, that Najee video. Yeah.
So keep coming, keep subscribing to the YouTube channel. We're at 10,200 now, and let's get that on up. Let's get the momentum moving forward towards that. I don't know, 15K maybe. I feel like that's where we need it.
We want those Strack by numbers. That's what we want.
Yeah, we can't have them so far. We got to start reeling them in. Like let's go.
Yeah. I'm Zachary Smith, PGH. Like Alan said, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Comment down below as well. And if you're listening somewhere else, leave us a 5-star review, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever your podcast platform of choice is. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in, taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.